So here you see all the parts put on, in this case, a Cheez-It box, but cardboard. And these are all the pieces that are going to be used as structural. As I said before, it's got wheels, formers, wings, bars, etc., etc. And as we cut those out, we'll see how it goes. And I figured we'll start with something relatively simple, in this case, the seat, which you can see has its various parts. So you do, what you imagine. You just simply cut this out carefully. I tend to use an X-Acto blade for everything, but a lot of people just use scissors, which is fine. I just have used an X-Acto blade for years and it seems to work very well for me. So you just peel those suckers apart and then you start to check it out. One thing you notice is that the seat's going to have to be folded. And I use a little piece of piano wire here that I have ground the tip of it to look like a ballpoint pen. And these lines here are going to have to be folded to make the seats, make the sides and the back. So in order to make the paper fold a little better, you take a straight edge and you just streak rather lightly along, just not too much pressure, along those lines with something. Some people use the back of a knife, some people use a dull knife. I just tend to use this piece of piano wire. So anywhere where there's going to be a fold, you just drag along. Maybe you could fold without doing this, but my impression is you get something that looks kind of wonky and isn't crisp, and you want these parts to be nice and crisp and even. So now you go through and you start cutting it out, and what we'll show first is just cutting out a curve. And to cut out curves, you cut right along the line. In this particular model, it seems like on the line, not outside, but on the line is just about perfect. You go around curves, you just do it very slowly and carefully. Move the knife around in a curve. Sometimes you even move the paper a little bit. And you slowly cut this thing out. No hurry whatsoever. Usually, I wasn't doing it in this case, but I use a pair of visors so I can see really close. And I just very, very carefully with a sharp knife go through and cut all these pieces, trying to leave as little white edge as possible. You're just trying to leave the color itself. So you have to cut this whole piece out, or any of these pieces we'll be using, completely, all the way around, and then ultimately we'll start to put it all together. Ultimately, you end up with all those pieces cut out. The little rectangular piece we'll put on later. But you can see that the main components are here, and we'll start to fold those along the line. But you notice that you've got this white edge everywhere. Everywhere you cut, there's a piece of white paper. So, two schools of thought. Real purists leave that as is. What I tend to do is try to color them. And initially, all I'm doing is folding these pieces up very carefully. I've got big, fat fingers, and so you got to be really pretty careful. But you can form things together and get a feel in your head how that's going to come together. And the back I fold up so that it's nice and even. And then I sort of place these pieces together and see if they're going to actually fit. And looks pretty good. You can see the general idea, but there is a curve here, and that piece of paper has to be curved up. You can't just force it up there. It won't glue right, probably. So what you're going to do is curl that little piece, and how you do that is by taking something around, like my wife's knitting needle, and you roll it back and forth using your finger underneath as sort of a soft place of the palm of your hand. And as you roll back and forth, it will automatically start to curve. Some people use the bottoms or a mouse pad to push against even. Something that will give a little bit, so as you roll, you'll deform the paper and have it roll up just like that. Now we basically have it formed the way it's supposed to be formed. It's not perfect, but it's better than a straight flat piece, which is sort of imperative to make everything glue. So I'm test fitting some more, making sure everything is where it's supposed to be. And You can do a lot of pushing and squeezing of paper and just basically making sure it's going to look good. But that's going to be a basic seat, and that's going to turn out pretty nice.
He is a
Now,
ginormous little butt.
the next thing here is I will color these. I found some little markers that in this case is kind of a gray color, and it will go through all of those places that are white just to make sure that the white doesn't show, or at least to minimize it. You can also use paint, certainly. Probably the best thing to do is mix your own paint, like acrylic paint, and get an exact color closer than these markers. But for demonstration, this is fine, and ultimately it will probably look just fine. But you have to go all the way around these places where it's white. Don't miss any, and do them now before you actually fold and glue, because if you forget to, it's very hard to get in there with a little piece or a little marker or anything to make it look nice. I guess it's an advantage of paint, because if you had paint on a fine brush, you probably could do that. But this is an easy way to do it.
Super cute.
And now, this is the glue I use. Very typical. It's turbo. There is some that isn't turbo, and I haven't used it yet. This turbo stuff dries almost too fast at times, and so you have to sort of work quicker than you might want to. So maybe the regular glue like that would work even better. I take a pin as an applicator and I put it along where it's supposed to go, or where I think it's supposed to go after test fitting. And less is more here. You definitely don't want to hog on the glue everywhere. Sometimes you'll see that I get more on than I really should. The good news is it's easy to remove, especially since you've coated everything with a lacquer overcoat, like Krylon Clear or something similar, because it won't stick that well to that. And so it's pretty easy to just kind of rub it off. And now I start to fold this together, and you just start teasing it around. You put the pieces up, and I tend to try to put several pieces on at the same time. Probably not that good of an idea, but I find that if I sort of fold my hands and form them in such a way that the part is holding together, the glue will take hold, and I can end up kind of molding the piece into shape a little bit. You can see I'm twisting it, putting some torsion on it, trying to get it to come together just so. I'm not worried too much about the front yet. But once I get this thing going, you can see I sort of push and pull and tug and hold. And as I hold, the glue does start to take. If you need a little bit more, you just go ahead and put some on. Sometimes I put too much on and then I wipe it off, and I wipe too much off. So you just keep going back and forth until you have it just about the way you want it. Perhaps using a brush would be a good idea. I haven't done that yet, but now looks like what I'm trying to do here is just do the bottom first. Because it looks like, contrary to what I just said, it didn't work that well. But I guess what I'm going to do is get these to glue on at the bottom, get them nice and solid first, and then go back and get the rear sides. One thing you'll notice too is that there's gray all the way around on the part, whereas there's those white sides are going to get gray on them, and that'll be shown in the next little clip. That's because they have to be gray, because you can see on the outside very clearly the seat, so you have to make sure you cover those up. That's what those extra gray pieces are for. So now I'm using my brain cell here, and now I've gone back after feeling this out a little bit, and I'm going to go ahead and bring this up, and I think, again, with some little bit of cajoling here, this thing will come together and hold, and you'll actually start to get a nice three-dimensional seat. And I realize these videos are kind of boring. At the same time, the fact that they're real time, it lets you know how long it takes to do something as simple as this. Someone who's really good at it, I suppose it's quicker. But you can see now you're starting to get a very, not a bad shape. It's starting to look the seat. You can always take a little excess glue here,
Cute, but
use a
heavy.
blade or use a pin to get off the extra. It does dry clear, which is nice, and it can also be rubbed off a little bit. But you can see that, there you have, it's not finished,
You got a
but you have a bucket
dedicated.
seat right there that looks very presentable. And with a little bit of extra work and some extra pieces attached, it will end up being a really nice seat. Now what I did is I put those two gray pieces on, but now I'm going to put this little guy on the front, that rectangular piece. And what I've done, it's curved, so I curved that little rectangular piece the very same way I curved the front of the seat right there, which is I put it in my fingers and I rolled a needle or a piece of wire so that I made a slight curve. And so now it actually fits up against there and it is an actual curve. So now you just take a little bit of glue and you dab some on. In this case, my glue was kind of drying out from the puddle, so I really should have gotten a fresh amount. Ultimately, it worked just fine though. And you see tweezers are super useful for all this kind of work, holding the little pieces. And after several false starts, I finally do get it connected. Sometimes it takes a while. Again, this would have worked better if I'd have just used fresh glue, so that's a lesson that rather waste glue than to try to eke it out, especially because the stuff dries so fast. But after a couple of false starts and replacing it, it finally starts to stick and it's straight and even. I also find that if you hold things together, either with your fingers or with tweezers, that usually makes things really makes them adhere quickly and straight and clean. Already it's starting to hold together now. I'm able to lift off the pressure and it's still there. The rest of the seat looks okay. I'm checking it out and it's not bad. So here is an initial stage anyway of the seat. There's still a little bit more detail to go, but that's not a bad, essentially finished seat, at least as it came in the kit.